One of the most influential statistics around emotional intelligence is that 67% of a leader's job is rooted in tasks and responsibilities that require emotional intelligence skills. So 2/3 of a leader's job day in and day out is around their ability to use their emotional intelligence. Now, what we also know is that there are a lot of people, not just leaders, that really struggle with their EQ, their emotional quotient. So one of the things that's very helpful in emotional intelligence development is knowing where we're starting from. And the EQI 2.0 assessment is one of the most reliable and valid assessments in emotional intelligence. I use this particular assessment. And in leadership, the Leadership 360 emotional intelligence assessment has the leader assess themselves, so the self-assessment perspective, and then also has raters, their peers, their manager, the direct reports, their friends and families, even people in other departments will rate. Because what's important is leadership is not just how we see ourselves, but also how do other people experience us. So I want to be able to show you what comes out of an actual report like that. What does a leader actually get to see? So this is what comes out of a report like that. First, what we see is we see our own self-assessment, how we responded to the emotional intelligence assessment. What do we really think about our own abilities in emotional intelligence? And oftentimes what happens is a leader will look at this and they'll say, oh, I need to work on self-regard, independence, interpersonal relationships. They'll look at the bars or the results of a very low number. And yes, sometimes that is exactly where we need to start, but sometimes it isn't. Sometimes where we're starting is where we have really big gaps in emotional intelligence. So here, where we might start is discretionary use of assertiveness. We need to dial down that skill set just a little bit while we're also working on developing some other skills. Now, I wanted to highlight this particular profile because take a look at that independence score. A score of 60 is below the low range of proficiency. A leader with low levels of independence has difficulty in separating themselves, their decision making, their judgments, and their biases from other people's emotional experiences. These kinds of leaders have a difficult time being self-directed and autonomous in their day-to-day tasks. So if we think about an independence score, that kind of freedom, what we might be looking at here is we might be looking at an individual, someone who has a difficult time emotionally separating from other people, who as a personality trait is an empath. An empath is someone who connects intuitively to other people's feelings. Now, is this bad as a leader? No, it isn't. Sometimes it is. So as a leader, sometimes we need to make the most difficult decisions. And oftentimes those difficult decisions will impact people, sometimes in a positive way and sometimes in a negative way. And a leader with a low level of independence has a very difficult time making those kinds of decisions, but also getting in front of those decisions, having the communications necessary to communicate in a way that helps people to understand the decision that needs to be made and why it needs to be made for the greater good. And these leaders with low independence will also have a difficult time managing the ripple impact of those kinds of decisions. They'll have a difficult time stepping into and caring for people who are upset and having those kinds of conversations. We need leaders with high levels of independence and the capacity to do that, because difficult decisions are things we do day in and day out. And so here we now see an opportunity for a leader to become aware, emotionally self-aware of a personality trait of being an empath. And when does that personality trait help them and is beneficial for them? And when does it hinder them? And in the hindrance side is where we have our balancing emotional intelligence skill. So in this case, developing that independent skill set is the skill set this leader will call upon in those times when their personality trait of being an empath is at the risk of derailing them from being successful in leadership.